So Jasmine, what are your ideas about combating stress in an actor's life? Because every actor does go through that stress, that rejection, that whole struggle for a really long time, especially in the beginning of their career. So what do you think is a good way to handle that?
That's a good question. Because on the beginning, everybody has this dream about acting and going on one audition and to hit it actually right away. It depends, I would say, because whatever stressful is maybe for you is not stressful for me. So first of all, I think we talk about these rejections, not getting roles, and how many times do you go for auditions? Just to get an idea, and not getting any role out of that.
Well, I would say you're
average.
I would say you're lucky if you get 1 out of 100 auditions.
Okay.
You're doing really well if you're getting 1 in 100 auditions. That's what I feel. Because in a day you can do, if you're really working hard, you can do 3 to 4 auditions. That means 1 job a month.
Okay.
So almost 100 auditions in a month and 1 job. That's pretty good.
Alright. It's actually quite interesting because there are rejections and there are rejections. And a lot of people understand rejections or understand this or take this personal. It's not about the way they are and maybe what characteristics they have and so forth, but it's more about, this is like they as a person feel rejected, that somebody attacks them or just don't like them and so forth. And we have to actually diversify between these two things. And it's actually similar like a relationship. When you look for somebody who is looking decent and so forth, so you go there, you ask this person out and you get a no. And some people just go back, it's just like almost crying, so okay. And then there are some people, it's like, okay, you want to dance. It's like, person says no, so people just go, okay. So sitting in the corner the whole night and just feeling pity for themselves. And the other person is going this, hey, you want to dance? Decent looking girl or boy, usually girl. It's just like, no.
It depends on who's asking.
Yeah, of course. So, but this person goes to the next decent looking girl, so you want to dance? No. No. You want to dance? No. You want to dance? Yes. It's okay, here we go. And this is not understood as something is wrong with this person as such. It's just not matching. Yeah. Not everybody is made for each other. And I think coming from this idea back to acting and feeling rejected is, I think, the same. Not every movie is for each of the actors.
Right. And I guess sometimes the mistake a lot of actors make is they'll just go for every audition.
Yeah.
So
they just try to hit any of them.
Yeah, you're right. So if they just do a little bit of homework and see whether this is right for me or not, whether I fit into this character, and they can really save a lot of trouble, right?
Yeah. It's also how good you can become, and you can't become really excellent in taking any of these jobs.
Right.
So it's also, okay, of course, we have to also earn money. So even actors have to earn some money and not struggling and so forth, but it's also about what they want to reach, because everything is a development, and actors, when they start, they have no experiences, and of course they want to gain experiences, but in the idea of no matter what, I think it doesn't lead to something really excellent or really successful as such.
Right.
So I think actors have to be picky first of all, and then going for auditions, even when it's maybe 1 in a day or it's maybe 1 in a week, rather than 4 or 5. So it's like running the rat race. Right.
No, go for only characters that are right for you.
Exactly.
They can be more than 1 in a day, and sometimes maybe 1 in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So
being selective.
Yeah. Then your strike is more surgical and more to the point, instead of just shooting in the air. You have a fixed target.
Yeah, another point is also going for any audition just because you have to act, you have to play a little role, you have to show what you can do.
Yeah.
And taking this as like a little sport or a hobby, so this comes from a different background, not getting this job, but getting experiences, especially when you don't want to get the job.
It makes sense, it makes sense, it makes sense, because it is, in a way, practice also. So just treat it as a practice session, What I do is, personally, when I go for a job, I tell myself I'm the best guy for this job, okay? And nobody else is going to get it. Everybody else is idiot. And once I finish the audition, then I'm like, that was not worth it, and I completely erase the memory from my mind.
Okay.
So that way, I mean, I'm not saying that I don't have any stress and no stress comes into my life, but I think by doing that, I kind of minimize the stress part. That's how I handle it, and I believe different people will find different ways working for them.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think this is really, it's a test on the beginning for actors. It's really, so do you survive that? Going from one audition to the other, to another, and doing this maybe for years.
Yeah.
This kind of training or test. I think this is a good selection, first of all. But I think stressful is also, when I look through this, whatever I understood, it's also about, you know, when you're on the set, you got some role done, so which you like and which brings you further as well with your experiences. Also the image you create in public.
Right.
It's also about, I mean, on the set, so it's quite boring, usually almost all the time. So you have maybe for 10 hours, you have to shoot, and maybe you shoot something which is in spring and it's actually winter, and you know, it's also physical.
Yeah.
Exhaustion sometimes included, and it's like what to do. I mean, nothing. You know, when you don't have to do anything, it's really stressful. Yeah, this is tiring. This is stressful thing. What to do? Yeah. Then you start playing on your cell phone, stupid things, messaging people you actually don't want to message.
Yeah, it's just create trouble and more stress.
Yeah. So. And I think this is an interesting thing, what to do actually on the set when there's nothing to do except maybe observations. Right. So maybe that's why a lot of actors become after 10 years, 20 years directors, because they observe so much.
Not all of them, but I see your point. Yeah. But then, you know, there's a limit to observation also. You can't just keep observing people for 10 hours every day for years and then.
Exactly, or talk to all these other people on the set.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think this is also a part to manage.
Yeah.
But there are really interesting things actually to use on a cell phone. It's like mind games, this memory trainings and whatsoever. So it sounds really funny. Or you just try to get a new language done in your brain.
Look, it sounds, both the examples that you gave are excellent examples for an actor, because acting means language and behavior. If you really try to restrict it to 2 words, these are 2 words. You copy the language of a character and you copy the behavior. So if you can work on languages, that is great for an actor. And the other one, memory, you have to remember a lot of lines.
Exactly.
So both of these things are very relevant, and you have so much time on the set.
Yeah, and you can make it really sharp, because if you have to say a sentence, I know this from my school times. I was 7 years, my first role to act in the theater, so the school theater. I had just 1 sentence, and I tried to make it as amazing as possible. And on stage I forgot my sentence, but this is different.
When you were 7?
7.
Oh, like 10 years ago.
Yeah, 10 in a day or something.
Something like that.
Fluffing my hair. Yeah.
No, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. That would be helpful.
Yeah, but this is an interesting thing as well. I mean, when you play a big role, maybe the main character, and you have to talk so much day and night and whatsoever. I mean,
especially in TV.
Yeah, how you get all this without teleporter in your brain?
Well, you get used to it. I mean, the brain, you know, is a wonderful organ, and it adapts. So if you're doing it day in and day out, you just pick it up. And after a while, what happens is, especially in TV, because you shoot so much and you're doing the same character for months and months and months, you just kind of become that character, you know. So it becomes easier in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, the brain is a muscle.
Yeah. So there is always some stress. If you're not finding work, then there's a stress of not finding work. If you're working too much, then there's a stress of working too much. So stress always comes into the picture.
Great world.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's actually I think even with all the stress, either you master it or you just, I don't know, you become a victim of it.
You collapse in front of it, yeah.
Yeah, something. Yeah, this is interesting what you mentioned about you go into different roles, you play different characters, and actually you become this character. And this is, I think, also stressful looking from this perspective, because you become what you think you are, right? So what you imagine. And I know this from life coaching. We can have within a snip a different world. So good or bad, I mean, what we usually have is in a very, you know, positive and beneficial way. And when you have a role to play, for example, which is a very, you know, cheerful role or happy or something, you usually become this person. So after some weeks and months on the set, so, and also in a negative way. If you act, you know, I'm a very bad person to play and stuff like this, I mean, this is also affecting you then in a negative way.
Totally, yeah.
And I think,
especially if you're not like that. You know what I'm saying? A bad person doing bad things, a real bad person doing bad things is fun for him. But if you're not a bad person and you're playing that character and you're trying to get close to that, then it's not organically. It's not who you are.
And then the art comes, and
it does, but I'm sure there's a price to pay.
Absolutely, there is. It's like, what was the role which you didn't like to play, which is actually completely not you.
I mean, there was one, without taking any names, there was one character which, you know, there's a certain way we see ourselves, okay, and we only want to play those characters. So there was one character that somebody asked me to play, and he actually lied to me. He told me something else about the character. And when I was actually shooting that thing, that's when I came to know about that character. And I was very angry and pissed off. But now you're signed up, you've already done a lot of days of shooting, you cannot back out. So I had to do it. That was a really stressful day because I'm playing something that I don't want to play. But in the end, it turned out to be a blessing in disguise. That's a different thing. There was a learning experience for me. But I did go through that process, that stressful process.
I think, yeah, this is the key word. There's so much to learn. Even, you know, acting something against maybe ethics or something like this. I mean, everything is bad on that. So, but there's one thing to learn at least. And this is like, okay, you understand maybe a little better why people are doing things which you find completely unacceptable. Yeah. And usually we have this, you know, saying in coaching, so people act because they can't act in a different way, in a better way. They act in the best way they can, and they, you know, have the resources at that time. Right. There was one, I just give an example, there was one guy, he had a one-year-old daughter, and he was on the bridge and he actually threw his daughter in the water, so the baby died. And then he got caught and stuff like this, and he was asked, so how can you, you know, just kill your own daughter? And it's like, this was a better option than living a life which is, I mean, he didn't have money, they didn't have any house or accommodation or anything. So, and he felt really terrified just not being able to give his daughter a proper life in that way. It's just like, okay, this was the best idea he had. I mean, it sounds really crazy. But, you know, so in order to understand a little bit, so it's interesting to play this roles.
Yeah.
But yes, but then you have to, I mean, you have to balance yourself again, right? Playing something positive. I mean, you can't run around, so, oh, everything is great. And I was like, oh my God, everything is bad, so I kill everybody. Terminator. So how you balance yourself in this?
I mean, I think different people deal with it differently.
Maybe, no.
Yeah, but then, and no matter what you do, how hard or complicated it is, after you've done it for some time, it becomes your normal, you know. So I would say, I would like to imagine that it doesn't affect me that way, but it does take some time to get out of that. And as long as you give it some time, you know, if you're rushing into things, then that's going to be a problem. You just give yourself time and, you know, just detox, you know. And use different detox rejuvenation tools. That helps for me.
Or meditation.
Yeah, all those are the tools. Meditation or, you know, stuff like that. Maybe a holiday or whatever works for you. Reading or, I don't know, horse riding, gardening, whatever works for you. Just take a break and do that. You got to cleanse your system.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the tricky part with the mind is you become this person, and I think, I mean, after some time you really think, so is this me, is this you, or how is that for you? To diversify, this is actually me, this was not me before, where are you?
Then, I mean, it's always you, no matter what character you play, it's your version of that. You never totally become that character. If you become that character, that means you've gone crazy.
You left yourself completely, at least for this time.
That's what I'm saying. If you leave yourself completely, then you've gone cuckoo. So you don't leave yourself completely. Even if you leave yourself 60% and go close to that character, that's a successful character. That's how I look at it. I mean, I have no scientific evidence for it. That's how I look at it. So because, I mean, if you've gone completely become that character, then that so far ahead that you can't come back to yourself, then you've gone crazy. Then you're lost.
Yeah.
So, you only go a certain distance. And depending on your experience, your craft, your talent, that defines how far you will go. So wherever I can reach, I reach there, and it does affect me, and without feeling that way, you cannot really play that character, and then you have to come out of it and then try to get into something else. Then I'm sure, unless you have some time to rejuvenate yourself and come back to your normal, it becomes a bit difficult if you hop from one to another.
I think you need an anchor. It's like an exit door.
Anchor, that's the key word, yeah.
The way actually back to yourself.
Yeah.
And I think this is our horror scenario, losing ourselves, losing all that stuff. And this is interesting because what we have in our brain is so adjustable, and we can adjust to everything. So we can change characteristics, we can change our habits, our routine, our character. And I think it's also an interesting learning process, or an outcome, a side effect maybe of playing a couple of different roles. I think you gain a lot of experiences, and you see, hey, I like this habit, so maybe I adapt this now in my life, and let's see what will come out of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting part.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, that the idea is that don't let those characters change you. I mean, you have to do that. At the same time, you have to let them change you too. Exactly. There are some good things also, as long as you're controlling that process of change. Because change is always happening. If you're not controlling it, then you're becoming something maybe you don't want to become. You know what I mean? As long as that's a conscious change, I think it's fine. It works for you.
I think there are a few characters, or some actors and actresses, and they are like Nicole Kidman.
Yeah.
It seems like they really dive completely into this role.
Yeah.
I mean, they're amazing, and I don't know how they.
It's a process.
Themselves.
It's a different process for different people. Like another example that I like to give is Meryl Streep. I mean, she quickly becomes that person. So, I mean, it's the same tools, and different people use those tools, but then some use them more effectively than the others, But there's a method to it, how you do that.
Yeah, I mean, this is like, there was this movie for, the boxer, this female boxer, and she didn't ever box in her life, and then she boxed for a year or something. It's just a preparation.
Like you said earlier when you were explaining something, that habits can be taught. And habits you can get rid of habits. So playing a character is like knowing the habits of that character and then learning those habits.
Learning, yeah, exactly.
So that's where the 1 year preparation comes in. What you do is you do those things repeatedly. First you observe them properly, what they're doing, their habits, language and behavior. The way they talk, the way they behave. So you observe that, and then you just do it repeatedly, and then you build that habit.
Talking about language, that's a nice keyword. This is something. When you acted in a Hollywood movie and you acted in a Bollywood movie. So talk about language. So how you use the language then? Did you talk in Hindi or in English?
No, actually I have one more experience of that. Within India, I've worked in Hindi, which is the main language here for Bollywood. And then I have worked in another language down south, Telugu, and I don't know that language. Now, so I have 3 different experiences. You mentioned the third one is that one, and that was more difficult in a way than English, because I speak English, but I don't speak Telugu.
You don't know what you're actually saying.
So there's a process you go through. The process that I went through was I'll sit down with someone and I'll ask them to read the lines. And then I'll write the lines in Hindi, the language that I understand. And then the pronunciations. Now everybody has a different way of speaking, different intonations, different highs and lows, different ways of expressing anger or disgust, different emotions. So what I'll do is, first I'll do that entire thing with one person, and I'll mark my things, wherever it goes up, down, the way they're doing it, and something that I like hearing, I don't understand it. But if it feels good, I'll underline it, and I'll make 3-4 people do the same thing.
Yeah.
So I'll find a common ground, and then I'll just remember it.
Find your version out of that. Yeah, that's interesting. You know, I had this once. I shooted some video, and there was just a few sentences like an interview, and this was interesting because this was my first thing in English. This was back many years in Germany, and I was not used to speak English at all. Pronunciation and so forth is different, and you understand somebody is reading, so not understanding, and somebody is really, you know what it talks about. And this was interesting because I recorded a native speaker, so she was from the US, she worked for me, and then I heard this again and again and again and again, so for hours every day. And this is actually also, it's like, okay, even, I mean, I understood this, of course. I mean, English is not that difficult, and I had this in school. When I started, it was 11 years old, so there was some memory, of course. In the 6 years ago. 5, yeah.
6 years ago.
Grade, yeah. 6?
You were 11, so 6 years ago, right? We're sticking to our story.
This is your story, but yes, let's give it our story. Now I'm 17 years old. Woo! Thank you, I like that.
So stress goes down like that, you know?
It's like, to keep my experiences in the age I have now, and I don't know, to keep the freedom when I was 17. This is my life, actually. You identified it.
I try.
What about you?
I try. So, thanks a lot, Jasmin. That was an interesting discussion. You know, hopefully we'll do it again.
Yeah. Thanks also. I had a really interesting time.
I hope so.
And I wish you all the best for your future plans,
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Thank you.
That you hit it.
Thank you.
Whatever you want to hit.
Thanks a lot.